Welcome back to The Past Revealed, where we uncover the forgotten stories that shaped our world. Today we dive into one of history's most legendary conflicts, the Trojan War. You've heard the names: Helen, Achilles, Hector, the Trojan horse. But have you ever wondered, did it really happen? Or is it just a myth teaching us about pride and betrayal? For centuries, scholars and archaeologists have debated whether Homer's tales hold truth, or if the war is pure legend woven into Western culture. Today, we'll peel back the layers of time, explore archaeological evidence, and compare myth with reality to uncover what might have truly happened on the plains of ancient Troy. Before we begin, I want to know what you think. Was the Trojan War a real event, or a myth to entertain and instruct ancient societies? Pause and comment your thoughts below. Grab your tea, coffee, or a notebook, because this episode will take us through the ruins of Troy, Homer's poetry, and the timeless lessons that echo through history. Welcome to The Past Revealed. Let's uncover the real story behind the Trojan War. To understand the Trojan War, we first need to understand how it was told by Homer, the legendary Greek poet whose works, the Iliad and the Odyssey, have survived for centuries and shaped the very core of Western literature. The Iliad, set during the final year of the Trojan War, focuses on the wrath of Achilles, the mightiest Greek warrior, whose personal conflict with Agamemnon over honor and pride becomes a mirror for the chaos of war itself. The Odyssey, on the other hand, follows the long and treacherous journey of Odysseus back to his homeland, weaving the consequences of the Trojan War into a narrative of survival, wit, and endurance. Homer's epics introduce us to unforgettable characters like Achilles, who is nearly invincible yet tragically flawed, and Hector, the noble defender of Troy who fights with honor until his final breath. We meet Helen, often described as the most beautiful woman in the world, whose abduction or elopement with Paris, the Prince of Troy, is said to have sparked the entire conflict. Then there's Agamemnon, the prideful leader of the Greek forces, and Odysseus, whose cunning and intellect would become crucial in bringing the war to an end. But as much as these stories capture the imagination, it is important to remember that Homer was a poet and a storyteller, not a historian. His epics were composed to be performed, to inspire, to teach lessons about heroism, pride, the will of the gods, and the harsh realities of war. They are filled with interventions from gods and goddesses, prophecies and supernatural elements that reflect the beliefs and values of the ancient Greeks. Yet within these stories lie realistic portrayals of warfare, detailed descriptions of armor, and insights into the customs and daily life of the time, suggesting that Homer's tales, while embellished, may contain echoes of real events. Today, we continue to search within his verses for clues about what might have truly occurred during this legendary war, using them as a lens to view the distant past, where history and myth intertwine in a dance as old as storytelling itself. In the stories handed down through time, the cause of the Trojan War is not a dispute over land or trade, but the result of a beauty contest among the goddesses. At the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, Eris, the goddess of discord, threw a golden apple into the gathering, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed the apple, leading to a quarrel that required a mortal judge to decide who was the fairest among them. That judge was Paris, the young prince of Troy. Each goddess offered Paris a tempting reward. Hera promised him power and dominion, Athena offered him wisdom and victory in battle, and Aphrodite offered him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, swayed by desire, chose Aphrodite, and in doing so, accepted her promise of Helen of Sparta, the wife of King Menelaus. Whether Helen was taken by force or left willingly with Paris remains a matter of legend, but the result was the same. Menelaus, enraged by the loss of his wife, called upon his brother Agamemnon and the kings of Greece to honor their oaths and join him in a campaign to retrieve Helen and punish Troy for the insult. Thus began the gathering of the Greek forces, assembling a fleet said to number 1,000 ships, setting sail across the Aegean to lay siege to the mighty walls of Troy. While this story, known as the Judgment of Paris, is wrapped in the presence of gods and the desires of men, It reflects the values of the ancient world. Honor, pride, and the keeping of oaths were central to Greek society, and the idea that a war could begin over the loss of a single woman, while dramatic, is tied to these cultural ideals. Yet historians and scholars question whether the elopement of Helen was truly the cause of such a conflict, suggesting instead that beneath this mythic tale lay deeper motivations rooted in trade, power, and control. As you listen, imagine the calm sea under the moonlight, the quiet before the storm of war, as ships gather and warriors prepare to fight for honor, for glory, and perhaps for ambitions far beyond the beauty of one woman. Allow yourself to feel the stillness of that moment, the sense of a world about to change, and consider how legends grow around the sparks of real events, turning them into stories that continue to shape our understanding of the past. For centuries, the city of Troy was considered a place of myth, a backdrop for Homer's grand poems, but nothing more than that. A story in the minds of poets and dreamers. That began to change in the 19th century when a determined German businessman and amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann set out to prove that the Trojan War had a real, physical setting. Guided by the descriptions found in the Iliad, Schliemann focused his search on a large mound called Hisarlik in modern-day Turkey, near the Dardanelles Strait. The journey was long and arduous. Excavating a site buried under layers of earth and centuries of history, Schliemann's team uncovered walls, gates, and artifacts, evidence that this was once a thriving city. But more importantly, they found that the mound contained multiple layers of settlements built one on top of the other, each representing a different period in the city's long history. Among these, the 6th and 7th layers, dating roughly to the 14th to 12th centuries BCE, showed signs of significant destruction. Walls had collapsed, homes lay in ruins, and remnants of weapons suggested conflict. It was these layers that many believed to be the Troy of Homer's epic. Later archaeologists, including Carl Blegen in the 1930s and others in the decades following, expanded upon Schliemann's work, uncovering more evidence that suggested Troy was a fortified city that had seen violent confrontations. The discovery of Mycenaean pottery at the site further linked Troy to the Greeks of the Bronze Age, hinting at contact or conflict. The location of Troy near the Dardanelles was also strategic. It controlled access between the Aegean and the Black Sea, making it a valuable prize for any kingdom wanting to control trade and military movement in the region. Though some of Schliemann's methods were crude by modern standards and led to damage at the site, his work was pivotal. It demonstrated that myths could be rooted in real places and events, opening the door to a new field of archaeological investigation that combined the study of texts with the physical evidence left behind. As you imagine the quiet digging at Hisarlik, the dust rising gently with each brushstroke of the trowel, think of the layers of history peeled back, revealing a city long buried under time. This city of stone and shadow may well be the Troy of legend, a place where myth and reality intertwine beneath the earth. The time period in which the Trojan War is believed to have occurred coincides with one of the most mysterious and transformative moments in ancient history, the Late Bronze Age collapse. Around 1200 BCE, many of the great civilizations that had dominated the Mediterranean and Near East began to fall into decline or were destroyed outright. The Mycenaean palaces of Greece, the Hittite Empire in Anatolia, the Egyptian New Kingdom, and other powerful states all faced sudden upheavals. The reasons for this widespread collapse remain a topic of debate among historians and archaeologists. Some suggest natural disasters such as earthquakes or prolonged droughts weakened these societies. Others point to invasions by groups called the Sea Peoples, whose attacks may have destabilized the region. Economic factors, including the breakdown of long-distance trade routes that sustained these civilizations, also likely played a role. Within this context of instability and chaos, it is easy to imagine how a city like Troy, located at the crossroads of important trade routes near the Dardanelles, would become a focal point of conflict. Control over Troy meant control over trade between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea, which was vital for wealth and power. Instead of a romantic war sparked by the abduction of Helen, the Trojan War may have been a part of these larger struggles for for survival and dominance amid a crumbling world order. Regional powers vied for control of territories, trade, and resources, and the siege of Troy could reflect these harsh realities. As you listen, picture the shifting tides of this turbulent era, a world where kingdoms rose and fell like the waves on the sea, where cities burned and were rebuilt, and where the stories of great wars were passed down by survivors. The Trojan War may be one thread in the tapestry of this epoch, a story of a city caught in the storm of history. While the ruins of Troy provide compelling physical evidence of a city that endured violent conflict, written records from the ancient world offer tantalizing glimpses that connect the legend to historical reality. In particular, Hittite texts from Anatolia mention a city called Wilusa, which scholars widely associate with Ilios, the Greek name for Troy. These texts refer to disputes and conflicts involving Wilusa, including correspondence between Hittite kings and other regional powers that hint at a city embroiled in political intrigue and warfare. They also mention a people called the Ahioa, believed to be the Achaeans, the very Greeks described by Homer as the besiegers of Troy. One notable reference involves a leader named Alexandru of Wilusa, whose name bears a striking resemblance to Alexandros, another name for Paris in the myths. This connection suggests that the Hittites were aware of a powerful ruler in Troy around the time the war is thought to have taken place. While these texts do not explicitly describe a 10-year siege or mention Helen, they support the idea that a real conflict occurred in the region between powerful states. Archaeological finds, such as weapons, burned layers and fortifications, back up the possibility of war. The combination of textual and material evidence strengthens the argument that the Trojan War is not purely mythological, but has roots in historical events. This intersection of history and legend invites us to look beyond the stories for a deeper understanding of the ancient world and how people remembered and interpreted their past. As you imagine these ancient scribes recording political alliances and conflicts on clay tablets, consider the complex web of power, diplomacy and warfare that surrounded Troy and shaped its fate. No element of the Trojan War has captured the imagination of the world quite like the story of the Trojan horse. It is a symbol recognized across cultures, a tale of cunning and deception that changed the course of a legendary war. According to the myth, after a decade of futile attempts to breach the walls of Troy, the Greeks devised a final, daring plan. They would pretend to abandon the siege, leaving behind a colossal wooden horse as an offering, a supposed gift to signify their retreat and a tribute to the gods. The Trojans, believing the war had finally ended, and viewing the horse as a trophy of their victory, brought it within their city walls, despite warnings from figures like Cassandra and Laocoon. That night, while the city of Troy slept in celebration, Greek warriors, hidden inside the hollow belly of the horse, emerged, silently opening the gates to allow the returning Greek army to pour into the city. Fires were set, swords were drawn, and Troy, which had withstood 10 years of siege, fell in a single, devastating night. This dramatic tale has found its way into countless retellings across centuries, symbolizing not only the fall of Troy, but also the power of human ingenuity and the consequences of pride. Yet historians and archaeologists have long questioned the literal truth of this story. Could such an event have happened exactly as described, or does the tale of the Trojan horse conceal a more practical explanation hidden beneath layers of myth? One theory suggests that the horse may have been a metaphor for a siege engine, such as a battering ram or a mobile tower, used by the Greeks to breach Troy's defenses. Siege engines were often adorned with animal motifs, and over time, the memory of a horse-shaped structure used in battle may have evolved in oral tradition into the legendary wooden horse we know today. Another interpretation links the horse to the forces of nature. In ancient Greek culture, Poseidon was both the god of the sea and of horses, as well as the bringer of earthquakes. Some scholars propose that a significant earthquake may have damaged the walls of Troy, allowing the Greeks to enter the city, with the event later symbolically represented by the image of the horse, tying the destruction of Troy to the will of the gods. There is also the possibility that the horse represented a covert infiltration by a small group of Greek soldiers who found a way into the city through deception, bribery, or a hidden passage, opening the gates for the rest of the army. This successful infiltration could have become the foundation for the horse story, growing more elaborate with each retelling to emphasize the cunning of the Greeks and the folly of the Trojans. The symbolism of the Trojan horse extends beyond its literal interpretation. It represents the dangers of misplaced trust, the devastating consequences of pride, and the importance of wisdom over brute strength. The Trojans ignored warnings, believing themselves victorious, and it was this pride that led to their downfall. The Greeks, through patience and cunning, achieved what 10 years of direct conflict could not, reminding us that sometimes battles are won not by force, but by intellect and strategy. The story also teaches the lesson that victories often come with moral complexities. The Greeks achieved their goal, but the destruction of Troy was complete, and the consequences of their actions echoed long after the flames had died. The fall of Troy led to journeys of exile, like that of Aeneas, and the trials of heroes such as Odysseus, showing that even in victory, there are prices to pay. For the ancient Greeks, the Trojan horse was not just a story of a war tactic, but a narrative filled with cultural values and reflections on human nature. It highlighted the power of the gods, the dangers of hubris, and the fine line between cunning and deceit. It served as a reminder that even the mightiest cities can fall, and that trust, once betrayed, can lead to ruin. As you listen, let your mind drift to the quiet night before the fall of Troy. Imagine the calm that settled over the city as the Trojans celebrated, fires flickering against the walls, music and laughter echoing through the streets, unaware of the hidden danger within the wooden horse standing silently in the square. Picture the slow creak of wood as the hidden warriors emerged under the cover of darkness, their footsteps soft against the stone streets, moving through the city to open the gates to an army waiting beyond the walls. This image, both haunting and powerful, reminds us of the fragility of safety and the way a single act of deception can alter the fate of an entire civilization. The Trojan horse teaches us to remain vigilant, to listen to warnings, and to understand that victory, achieved through deceit, carries consequences that ripple through time. The enduring power of the Trojan horse lies in its ability to speak to us across millennia, a timeless tale that captures the essence of human nature and the complexities of war. It is a story of strategy and downfall, of trust and betrayal, and of the thin line between victory and destruction. Whether the horse existed as described or served as a metaphor for another event, its legacy endures as a symbol of the cunning that can change history and the hubris that can bring about the end of even the greatest cities. The ancient Greeks did not view their gods as distant or passive figures. Instead, the gods were deeply involved in the world of mortals, shaping events, influencing decisions, and embodying the forces of nature and human emotion. This divine intervention is a central theme throughout the stories of the Trojan War, where gods like Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, and Aphrodite take sides, engage in battles, and affect the fates of heroes and cities alike. In Homer's Iliad, the gods are portrayed with very human qualities: jealousy, pride, favoritism, and wrath, yet they also possess supernatural powers that allow them to tip the scales in mortal conflicts. For instance, Athena often supports the Greeks, guiding warriors like Odysseus and Achilles, while Apollo tends to favor the Trojans, punishing the Greeks with plagues and striking down their heroes. Hera, angered by Paris's judgment, works tirelessly to aid the Greeks and undermine Troy. This divine involvement reflects more than just storytelling flair. It reveals the ancient Greeks' understanding of the world as a place where fate and the will of higher powers intertwined with human action. Victories and defeats were seen not only as the result of mortal skill and bravery, but also as manifestations of divine favor or punishment. The gods were both protectors and destroyers, and their interventions symbolized the unpredictable and often cruel nature of life and war. Moreover, the gods in these myths also serve as metaphors for human traits and universal forces. Aphrodite represents love and desire, the very passions that ignite conflict and betrayal. Athena embodies wisdom and strategy, highlighting the importance of intellect in warfare. Apollo's association with plague and retribution echoes the devastation that war brings to communities and families. As the gods argue, scheme, and act on the battlefield, they reflect the complex interplay between human ambition, emotions, and fate. The Trojans and Greeks are pawns in a divine chess game, reminding listeners that history is shaped by forces beyond human control. This can be comforting or frightening depending on how one views the gods' role, either as guardians or as arbiters of destiny. For us today, these stories offer insight into how ancient people made sense of their world and experiences. They turn to myth to explain why suffering occurs, why fortune changes suddenly, and why some are victorious while others perish. By listening to these tales in a calm and reflective state, we gain a deeper appreciation for the psychological and cultural dimensions of history, where human experience is intertwined with belief and meaning. As you listen to the gentle cadence of this narration, imagine the gods watching silently from Olympus, their unseen hands guiding events, shaping destinies, and reminding us that the past was as much about belief and story as it was about battles and walls. The Trojan War, whether fully historical or largely mythological, has left an indelible mark on human culture, echoing through millennia of literature, art, philosophy, and popular imagination. Its themes are universal: love and jealousy, pride and honor, courage and tragedy, making it a timeless story that speaks to the very heart of human experience. After the Greeks laid waste to Troy, the story did not end. The Roman poet Virgil, writing centuries later, linked the war to the founding of Rome through the epic Iliad. Virgil's hero, Aeneas, is a Trojan prince who escapes the burning city and embarks on a journey that leads to the establishment of a new civilization. This connection gave the Romans a prestigious ancestry, tying their history to the heroic age of the Greeks and Trojans. Throughout the Middle Ages and Renaissance, the Trojan War remained a popular subject, inspiring epic poems, plays, and paintings. Writers like Geoffrey Chaucer and Shakespeare drew upon the story's rich tapestry of characters and events to explore human nature and the consequences of ambition and desire. Artists portrayed the war's dramatic moments, Helen's beauty, the fierce battles, the tragic deaths, with vivid emotion, keeping the tale alive for new audiences. In the modern era, the Trojan War continues to captivate through novels, films, television series, and even video games. Each retelling adapts the story to contemporary values and interests, highlighting different aspects such as the heroism of Achilles, the tragedy of Hector, or the cunning of Odysseus. The war has become a symbol of not only conflict, but also the enduring power of storytelling itself. The characters have grown beyond their origins, becoming archetypes: Helen as the femme fatale, Achilles as the tragic hero, Hector as the noble defender, and Odysseus as the clever survivor. These figures serve as mirrors for our own fears, hopes, and struggles, showing us that the stories of the past still resonate deeply in our present. Moreover, the Trojan War serves as a cautionary tale about the costs of pride and the destructive consequences of war. It reminds us of the fragility of human endeavors and the price paid by those caught in the tides of history. In peaceful reflection, we can consider how such lessons remain relevant today. As you let these stories wash over you, consider how the Trojan War's legacy is not just about ancient battles, but about the power of myth to shape identity, culture, and understanding across generations. As our journey through the tale of the Trojan War comes to a close, it's important to reflect on the delicate balance between myth and history that defines this story. Archaeological discoveries, ancient texts, and Homer's timeless epics all point to a conflict rooted in real events but transformed through generations of storytelling into the ground myth that captivates us today. The city of Troy, once thought lost to legend, has been uncovered beneath layers of earth, revealing a place of wealth, culture, and violence. The people who lived there experienced the same hopes and fears as we do, caught in a time of turmoil and change during the collapse of the Bronze Age. The war that Homer described was likely inspired by actual conflicts over power and trade, but it was shaped and retold to reflect the values, beliefs, and imaginations of those who told it. This story reminds us that history is not just about facts and dates, but about the narratives we create to make sense of the past. Myths carry truths about human nature, culture, and the world that facts alone cannot always capture. They allow us to connect with the emotions and experiences of those who came before us. As you close your eyes and let this gentle narration guide you toward rest, imagine the ancient walls of Troy, bathed in moonlight, the quiet after the storm, the whispers of heroes long gone. Remember that every story we tell, every legend we pass down, is a thread in the vast tapestry of human history, one that connects us across time and space. History invites us to listen carefully, to hear the echoes beneath the surface, and to appreciate the complexity of the past. It asks us to be patient, to look beyond the obvious, and to understand that truth can be layered, just like the city ruins uncovered at Troy. The past is not static. It is alive in our stories, our art, and our shared memory. Thank you for joining me on this peaceful exploration here on the Past Revealed. If you found this journey calming and insightful, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to continue uncovering history's mysteries together. Until next time, rest well and dream of the past's quiet truths.